You are traveling to another train of thought, one not from this century. You are entering the paradigm shift.
Well, good morning. This is March 12th, 2019, and this is the paradigm shift for that day. And there will not be a Wasatch Report following this show today. There's other things going on. And this week on Thursday, we have a big show on the Wasatch Report. Suzanne and I talked about maybe me doing my show prior to that and having two shows live back to back on Thursday. I'm still considering that. I'm not quite sure whether there will be, so I won't say at this point whether there'll be a live paradigm shift before the Thursday the Wasatch Report, but we'll see. The only reason I am reticent to do that is because it is such a big show. We have such a special guest lined up for Suzanne's show. I really just don't want to be distracted from making sure everything is set and ready to go for her show. Because obviously some days you can tell it gets a little hectic, me producing my show and then trying to turn around and get everything set up and produce Suzanne's show. And so we'll see. I don't know. It may go off. I don't know. We'll find out. Let me minimize this so I can read this. And for those of you that live and listen in the area surrounding where I live, you would know the Corning Painted Post High School, the Corning Hawks. The Hawks boys soared into Syracuse for the NYSPHSAA Championship and landed on the podium with a program best third place finish. Congratulations, Corning Hawks, on that excellent showing at those championships. I know that one family, a good friend of ours, the Chang family, are especially proud. Congratulations, Alex, for a good job with the bowling team there at Corning Painted Post High School. So just some local, a little something added locally here. So the people around this area know exactly who we're talking about. So anyway, as I stated before, let's just back up. Let's talk about the network. There are numerous shows. On Sunday night, there was the Renegade Rambler show. And then immediately following that, there was a new Bailey Report on Sunday. That may, I'm kind of guessing that may be the schedule for a while. The Renegade Rambler on Sunday night at 8, and then the Bailey Report at 9 p.m. Eastern because of Dan's work schedule. So we'll see. I'm not quite sure. I'm not going to specifically say that's what's going to be the schedule, but I suspect that's what's going to happen for a while until he can get his work schedule set where he can do his show in the mornings. So we have those shows on Sundays. Normally on Mondays, there's this show at 9 a.m. Eastern, and then the oh my gosh, I got my show on my mind today, I guess. The Wasatch Report immediately following this show at 10 on most days. And then let's see, we have between 11 and 1, we have a whole bunch of Mike Meharry's podcasts, and we are adding new ones. Every time he adds a new one, it goes into the lineup. So there are new podcasts being added all the time in those Mike Meharry podcasts for that 2 hours. They're about 10 minutes each. So if you don't have the whole 2 hours to listen, they're about 9 to 10 and a half minutes each. And you can listen to one or two, and right now it's a loop. And so same things are playing over every week. So if you don't have time to listen to them all, listen each day and just pick up one or two more. And that's with the Mike Meharry's with the 10th Amendment Center. A very good organization. Look them up online. Well worth checking out. And let's see. Then at 1 o'clock we have the. I just listened to it last night. the Brush Fires of Freedom with my good friend Sean Hoffine. Sean is a great guy. He's very energetic. You will enjoy his show. And that's on at 1 p.m. Eastern, Monday through Saturday. And there are new shows going up all the time with that. I posted his 311 show last night. That'll be playing on Thursday, I believe, at 1 p.m. And then because that's not an hour-long show, because it's terrestrial, so there's breaks. And so it's under an hour. We have also Mike Meharry, who does podcasts with Peter Schiff, and the Shift Gold Friday Gold wrap-up. And so every week I replace the oldest ones of the podcast for the Shift Gold and for the Brush Fires of Freedom, and the new one goes up. This week it was on Thursday. Next week a new one will be on Wednesday, because that's how it just kind of rolls out. I just go right through the line and replace the oldest ones. So those are the daytime ones. Then we have one more evening one at 9 p.m. every Monday through Saturday. There is Justin and Mike and their show, The Other Side. We'll add new ones as they have new ones, and I have time to download them and get them on our radio station. So there is a lot to listen to on radio.co. Go to our our Facebook page, our Facebook page, and you'll find on there Use App. That'll take you right to it. Or you just go back and you cannot help but find a link to radio.co. Save it on your computer, save it on your phone, and every time you can listen to it anytime, anywhere. And also you'll find, I didn't post one this morning, but you go back, there's dozens of them. You'll find a low data stream, radio.co stream. And so if you're on your phone and you have limited data, it reduces the, instead of 128 bit, it's 100 or 64. So it just uses much less data. So if you're on a short data leash, use that. But they're there. Just search for them. I mean, it's almost impossible not to find it. I mean, matter of fact, it is impossible not to find that link. So if you want to listen on Radio Co., listen there. We also have the YouTube channel, which gets some that if you're looking for old shows, that's where you're going to find them. We don't have an RSS feed. I would dearly love to have an RSS feed. And that way the shows would be there and people could download the shows, just the audio files. But I just don't have the ability to set that up. And if maybe someday someone will set one up for us and we will have an RSS feed where you can get the old shows just on audio, so you don't have to watch the video. Because my show, there is video. A lot of the shows there aren't, just simply because it's easier, and oftentimes the added video makes the audio so poor, and it makes it very choppy. The video is very choppy. Some people just do not have the video or the whatever it is with your router. Oh my, I forget this technical stuff. That's not my thing. But sometimes it just makes the video is very choppy and the audio is choppy. So we just do it without any video, and it makes the audio much better. So anyway, look for us on Radio Co. Listen to the shows, please. Now, like I said, and I'm going to set this up here, get the right mouse. I have two mice, one for each computer. So sometimes it gets a little confusing. I grabbed the wrong one, red and blue. All right. As I stated earlier, on Thursday, we will be having a special The Wasatch Report. Suzanne Sherman will be having Dan Fisher, who is running for the nomination to be the Republican nominee for governor in the state of Oklahoma. Dan was with Suzanne on K-Talk out of Utah, radio station. I think it's in Sandy, Utah. He's going to join Suzanne for a special interview And if you're not familiar with Dan, I'm going to play a speech where he's at a Republican gathering. They had all the candidates together on the stage. And if you were watching the video, you could sit there and watch the guy scowling behind him as he tells people who he is, because they are not that. They are not state sovereign people. They are quite happy with the status quo. Let me play this, and then we'll discuss it. It's about 5 minutes long, but I'm going to play it in its entirety, and I will try not to stop it and add my commentary. I'll try to let it play all the way through. It's hard for me to do, I know, but let's give it a shot.
I've written my comments down. I don't normally do that, so let me just begin. My wife Pam and I have been married for 37 years. We have 2 children, 3 grandchildren, 1 on the way. She and I were both school teachers for a number of years. Grew up in Western Arkansas. I became a full-time pastor when I was 24. I'm a full-time pastor today. While I was serving as full-time pastor, I served in the Oklahoma House from 2012 to 2016. Let me tell you, I could have been elected to a 3rd term. I walked away disgusted at the hypocrisy I saw in our own party. Frankly, I am incredibly frustrated with the Republican Party. The one thing I could always count on in the legislature is the Democrats would stand up for their principles. But unfortunately, Republicans, I never know where they were going to land. And normally, they landed exact opposite of what they said they believed and what I suspect they campaigned on. Now, I've been a Republican all my adult life, and we have a great party platform. Problem is, we don't do it. So I would suggest that we may seem more interested in being empowered than we are in actually defending the principles we say we believe. So we either need to abide by our party platform or put it in the paper shredder. Oklahomans are weary of Republicans who campaign as conservatives and govern as moderates. Now, let me give you an example. For example, we say we believe in small government, but in the last 10 years, we've increased government spending in this state by $3.83 billion. Now, I don't call that shrinking. I call that growing. I am actually a Republican who believes in small government, and if I'm elected as governor, I'll shrink it down to its proper core functions. Now, we Republicans claim that we want to stop abortion, but during the past 8 years, the number of abortion clinics in this state has doubled. I am running as an abolitionist. I believe it's time for decent Oklahomans to stand up and end the Holocaust of abortion. We murder over 5,000 babies in Oklahoma every year. Now, some in this race are saying that there's no real difference between pro-life and abolition. It's just simple semantics. Well, I'm here to tell you that's not true. George Soros' right-wing watch and People for the American Way sure don't think it's just semantics, because they viciously attacked me yesterday for being an abolitionist. Now, why am I the only candidate on this stage being attacked by leftists if there's no difference in being pro-life or being an abolitionist? It's because they know that there's a huge difference and that I'm going to shine the light on their evil ways if I become governor. Most politicians do not intend to outlaw abortion. I've learned this, and they'll actually fight those who try to do it. They believe we should continue nipping around the edges by heavily regulating it. So we've been doing that for 45 years. What has it produced? I can tell you, over 60 million dead babies. Now, some of my opponents say that there's nothing we can do about this. We must bow to the federal courts. Apparently, they believe we're no longer governed by the consent of the governed, according to the Declaration, but we're governed by the consent of the courts. One of the candidates even believes that the Bible demands slavish submission to the federal government, even doing so violates God's law or our Bill of Rights. So let's say that the Supreme Court outlaws guns. We're supposed to obey that? Were people like Daniel the prophet and the apostles wrong when they defied the governments of their day? Were the abolitionists of the 1850s wrong when they defied the law to help runaway slaves? Were Oscar Schindler and Corrie ten Boom and her family wrong when they defied the Nazi power to save Jews? So is there no line in the sand? Is there no higher law than the federal government? Yes, it's God's law. So I believe that it is time to assert Oklahoma's state sovereignty, do what's right, concerning a whole host of issues, not just the life issue. The states were sovereign at our founding, and I believe they still are. I can find no official document where we ever surrendered our sovereignty. So it's this simple. Either the states matter or they don't. Either we, the people, are the final authority in our representative republic, or then we are truly just ruled by Washington, D.C. It's one or the other. So it's time to stop calling it the good talk, return to our core principles, and actually do them instead of compromising once we get into power. Guys, Oklahomans deserve that. They deserve that. So if that's the kind of candidate that you want, then guys, I'm your man. If not, vote for one of these other men on the stage. My name is Dan Fisher. Go to our website, fisherforgovernor.com. If you want to know what we're really about, we're about all kinds of things. Check it out. I'll be right here at the table. Thank you so much for having me. God bless you. And I pray that God can bless Oklahoma.
Well, I got a message that my connection to the Radio Co had not gone through. So, Radio Co, you missed most of Dan Fisher's speech. You caught the very end of it about him talking about state sovereignty. And again, as I said before this video or this audio, if you watched it, you saw the guys behind him. One guy was just sitting back there scowling at him the whole time. The others just sat there, their arms crossed, obviously uncomfortable with his talking about, number one, the very beginning, he talked about abolition and that all his opponents on the stage were pro-life. And there is a difference. And we'll talk about that in just a minute. Then he talked about, towards the end there, you heard him talking about state sovereignty. And that's one of the major, I mean, those two reasons are why we here at the Cerberus Radio Network, we support Dan Fisher's candidacy, because this is what we have been pushing as the solution. Unfortunately, the majority of people out there are quite happy with the status quo. So you had guys sitting behind him that were pro-life, and I said, well, there's a difference, because Dan Fisher is an abolitionist. He believes it should be abolished. What is the difference? If today, and we're going to talk about something related to this in a few minutes about another organization, but if today a phone call came through and it was some pro-life organization that was asking you for money to fight abortion, there's two things to ask them. Well, it might be three things. I'm not quite sure. First thing is, do you support abolition of abortion? They may say yes. My guess is they'll say, well, I don't know about abolition, because they know that they can't abolish it, or they'll be out of a job. See, this is the dirty secret about all this. These guys that are pro-life, they're pro-life to the point where they want to be able to manage it so that there is an issue. Dan Fisher wants to solve the Holocaust. He wants to end the Holocaust. He wants to end the murder of babies in Oklahoma. And you may say, well, what about my state? Well, see, that's federalism. And that is a thing that we talk about so often here on the Cerberus Radio Network. The problem is, most of you out there aren't federalists. Most of you out there are happy, conserving Marxists. You're conserving Marxism. You're happy to conserve the status quo. You believe it or not, you are for big government solutions. You keep going, we need to get this changed in Washington, D.C. Well, no, that is, you're supporting a top-down, command and control, Soviet-style government, where the bureaucrats in Washington, D.C. dictate what all 320 million of us do. That may come as a shock to a lot of you, but you are good Marxists. You're happy conserving Marxism. That's the conservatives we have today. They're not conservative in the sense that they're trying to do away with big government in the old sense of the word conservative. They've made peace with big government. They're trying to conserve big government. That's what their conservative is about. And many of you out there are just like them. Try to argue that the general government does not have the authority over immigration. And you'll get a myriad of people yelling and screaming at you that you don't know what you're talking about. We were talking about this last night, and I'm going to bring it up here again. I had a guy that was calling me an idiot because obviously immigration is in there. I just didn't even know about Article 1, Section 9, Paragraph 1. I was a moron because I didn't know about it. It says there, migrants. So obviously I'm an idiot, and I don't know that they have the authority to rule over immigration. I'm going to get my Constitution because this has me worked up again. I'm going to talk about this again. Article 1, Section 9, Paragraph 1. The article that proves that I'm an idiot and that immigration is actually part of the Constitution. The migration or importation of such person as any of the states now existing shall think proper to admit shall not be prohibited by the Congress prior to the year 8,808. But a tax or duty may be imposed on such importation not exceeding $10 for each person. What was that clause about? It was about the importation of human slaves. It's not about migration. It's not about immigration. It's about the importation of human slaves. But I'm an idiot because I didn't know the word migrant was in there. Well, it's not an immigrant when you're being sold into slavery in this country. And there was slavery back then. You know, it's part of history. There was slavery. You know what? There's slavery today. You go to Africa, and there is a massive slave trade in Africa now. Don't hear about it much, but it's there. So even if I was the biggest idiot in the world and immigration was, because of this clause, part of the Constitution, and it was put in there, who decided who was the migrant? Let's read that first sentence again. The migration or importation of such persons as any of the states now existing shall think proper to admit. So even if I was a complete idiot and didn't realize that somehow means immigration, not importation of slaves, even if that person was correct, and it does mean they have immigration in the Constitution, who was given the final authority? The states. The states now existing shall think proper to admit. So they can decide, the states, per that right there, can decide who to admit. And that's what we were saying all along. Suzanne the other day, Suzanne in her article to the 10th Amendment Center, talks about the immigration policy is set by states. Naturalization in Article 1, Section 8 is left to the general government. They are to set up uniform rules of naturalization. The states can decide who comes in. The federal government sets up rules on how they can become American, U.S. citizens. All right, I'm way past the break. I'm going to take a quick break, come back, get back into this, discuss a little bit more. I'm going to get into a different subject, but it's going to be in the same vein because it's all tied together. So let me close out Dan Fisher's speech.
You are traveling to another train of thought, one not from this century. You are entering the paradigm shift.
Well, good morning. This is March 12th, 2019, and this is the paradigm shift for that day. And there will not be a Wasatch Report following this show today. There's other things going on. And this week on Thursday, we have a big show on the Wasatch Report. Suzanne and I talked about maybe me doing my show prior to that and having two shows live back to back on Thursday. I'm still considering that. I'm not quite sure whether there will be, so I won't say at this point whether there'll be a live paradigm shift before the Thursday the Wasatch Report, but we'll see. The only reason I am reticent to do that is because it is such a big show. We have such a special guest lined up for Suzanne's show. I really just don't want to be distracted from making sure everything is set and ready to go for her show. Because obviously some days you can tell it gets a little hectic, me producing my show and then trying to turn around and get everything set up and produce Suzanne's show. And so we'll see. I don't know. It may go off. I don't know. We'll find out. Let me minimize this so I can read this. And for those of you that live and listen in the area surrounding where I live, you would know the Corning Painted Post High School, the Corning Hawks. The Hawks boys soared into Syracuse. Well, welcome back to the Paradigm Shift here on the Cerberus Radio Network. Before the break, we were talking about Dan Fisher, and then it got into a little bit about this whole immigration thing. The fact of the matter comes down to that the states are the sovereign. If you want to find where the whole principle is stated the best, all right, you need to go to the writings of Madison and Jefferson. Madison wrote the Virginia Resolution, and Jefferson wrote the Kentucky Resolutions. In these principles, the principles of 98, this was from 1798, Madison expounded interposition. That is where the states would put themselves between the new general government and the people of the states. So if the general government passed an unconstitutional law, and honestly, folks, there is very little that is federal law today or regulatory law as passed by fiat imposed upon us, even by Trump. There's very little of that is constitutional. Practically, if there's 1%, that's a lot. The vast majority of what they do, they have no constitutional authority to do. So, if that's the case, how are we supposed to be protected? How is our liberty, as Patrick Henry says, the direct end of our government is liberty? How is our liberty to be protected? I know. Let's go to a federal court. I know a federal court is going to rule against the very government that pays their paychecks in your favor, for sure. Right? So we got the NRA suing in federal court, Florida in the federal court. Or let's go to federal court. We will overturn Roe versus Wade, or we'll overturn gay marriage, or we'll overturn the LGBTQ men in bathrooms. Let's just go to a federal court. They don't have authority over these things. That is the plain and simple of the matter. The state of Florida passed a law. It may stink, but that is the state of Florida's prerogative. Don't like it? Vote those people out and put people in, and they'll change it. And if you can't affect that change, then vote with your feet. Go to a state that has good laws. But the fact of the matter is, today we don't apply the right standards. We go to a federal court, and they're not going to rule against the federal government. So how are we going to protect the people's liberties? Well, Madison, again, we'll start with Madison. He expounded the idea of interposition. So when the government has an unconstitutional act, the state should pass a law, pass a legislation stating that in that state, that law will not be in effect. I have an article over there talking about Utah and their raw milk legislation, where they're going to nullify federal edict through the FDA. Again, this is more just regulatory law. They're going to tell them that people can drink raw milk. I've consumed raw milk in my lifetime. It's good. It's very, very creamy. I mean, there's tons and tons of cream in it. It tastes completely different because it hasn't had everything cooked out of it. So they're going to do that law. I have an article here. I don't know if I'm going to have time to get to today. I might get to it, but I'll just mention it here. Florida considers permanent daylight savings time. So they're talking about legislation that would exempt them from this federal edict that we have to change our fall back in the fall and spring forward in the spring. They're just going to stay in the spring. So the state is interposing between what the federal overlords, our federal masters, the plantation owners in Washington, D.C., are demanding of us, because that's what we are. We are plantation slaves. We're tax slaves today. Don't believe me? Don't pay your taxes. See what happens to you. I guarantee you, it'll be guys with guns. All you liberals out there that want to do away with guns, there'll still be somebody with guns. I mean, look at Germany. Who had the guns and who went to the gas chambers? Look at the Khmer Rouge in Vietnam and Cambodia. Lots of people died. Who had the guns and who died? Not the people with guns. The people they took the guns from. You look at anywhere that there was gun confiscation, and millions died. So anyway, the idea from Madison was that the state would put itself between the federal government and the people and defend the people through legislation, telling the general government that it doesn't have effect in their state. It's the same principle as what Jefferson said, just a little different name. Jefferson espoused the idea of nullification, where they passed legislation and said that the law was unconstitutional and it's null and void. It's not a law. So one, they put the state between the people and the other and the federal government. The other one, he just says it's not a law, so forget it. It's not. It doesn't. It's void and of no effect. So that's the principles of 1798. And again, from the old part of our station, we're still the same one, but our old idea was 18th century ideas for 21st century thinkers. These 18th century ideas apply today. again, we had people saying that. I saw the other day with Sessions saying that secession is illegal. And people were defending him that because the South lost, secession is now gone. So this whole idea in the 21st century is that somehow, because there was a war at some point, government now can take away natural rights. If that's the case, give up your guns now. Because if they can take away natural rights, then there is nothing. Freedom of expression, gone. Freedom, self-preservation, the natural right to self-preservation, gone. Free association, self-determination, gone. That's the problem with our present system. People keep fighting for something that isn't there. That somehow we can just somehow get that next right person elected in Washington, D.C. And I applaud some of these guys. I know some people that are running for U.S. House or Senate, and good for them. The problem is when they get there, they're not going to be able to affect change. Ask Rand Paul if he's affecting change there. Ask Justin Amash if he's affecting any change there. Honestly, what has changed in the last, let's just call it 10 years since those guys have been there? I don't know exactly how long they've been there, but let's call it 10 years. It's probably less, maybe a little bit more. Who knows? What has changed? Anything at all? No. We're not going to affect change in Washington, D.C. The way you affect change is apply the principles of 98. We need to be serious about putting people in our state and local offices that will apply the principles of 98. That is the solution. And that's why, going back to where this all started with Dan Fisher and his speech, espousing state sovereignty. That's why we support Dan so much, because the fact of the matter is, when it's all said and done, the only way we're going to stop federal overreach is if the states say no. And that may entail some states saying, all right, we've had enough. We're on our own. It's goodbye. Good luck. See you later. That's what we did. That's what we did to Great Britain. The principles that Jefferson espoused in the Declaration of Independence are the same today as they were then. All right. I took a late break last time. I'm going to take about a minute early break this time. And this whole thing, this break here, it has the dumbing down. It's from Idiocracy. And the reason I chose this is because when it really comes to it, our schools have done a great job dumbing down the populace when it comes to the Constitution. You have people arguing Article 1, Section 9 gives the government, the national government, I hate the N word, but that's what it is today, the national government, the authority over immigration, because it says migrants there, in spite of the fact that it says the states can choose who they let in. You have people that are arguing any myriad of things, even down to they want a Second Amendment right. They don't understand what the framers intended the Bill of Rights to be. We're going to talk about that when we come back, because I have an article here I want to get into about Donald Trump. But anyway, the dumbing down in this is because that's what the public schools have done to us. People today have no clue what's in the Constitution. They misapply what's in the Constitution, and they don't even know what the constitutional solutions to things are. Suzanne talked to this guy the other day, and he said, well, they didn't envision airplanes. Well, that's why they gave us Article 5. If you think that the government needs some sort of power over airplanes, then have an Article 5 and amend the Constitution and include airplanes in the Constitution. It's ridiculous. The whole point of the Constitution was to restrain the government, to defend our liberty. All right, let's go to this break, and we'll be right back. This is the Cerberus Radio Network, defending liberty and freedom from the flames of tyranny. I hate when it does that. Sorry about that. It, for some reason, started the wrong media file.
As the 21st century began, human evolution was at a turning point. Natural selection, the process by which the strongest, the smartest, the fastest reproduced in greater numbers than the rest, a process which had once favored the noblest traits of man, now began to favor different traits. Most science fiction of the day predicted a future that was more civilized and more intelligent. But as time went on, things seemed to be heading in the opposite direction, a dumbing down. How did this happen? Evolution does not necessarily reward intelligence. With no natural predators to thin the herd, it began to simply reward those who reproduced the most and left the intelligent to become an endangered species.
Cerberus Radio Network, protecting liberty and freedom from the flames of tyranny.
Well, welcome back to the Paradigm Shift here on the Cerberus Radio Network. Thank you for listening this morning. Appreciate you all that did listen today so far. Let's get into a different subject, and we'll close out probably on this. And we might get this one here. I don't know. We'll see. Trump unveils gun control school safety plan. And again, this printed a little bit long, so my sentences got cut off. Hopefully I can pick out enough to get the idea across here. President Trump on Sunday unveiled a school safety plan that seeks to steer military vets and retired cops into the education system and provide firearms training for specially qualified personnel. Let's just stop there. This is a local matter. Corning Painted Post School District, Troy Area School District, Mansfield. Doesn't, whatever. I could just, Elmira. That is a local issue. If they decide that they want to have retired police officers, they're armed as security, or military vets armed there as security, that's their decision. If they want to arm the teachers, as just selectively arm specific teachers that for some reason have some sort of skill set that would allow them to be security, that's their choice. This isn't a top-down command and control, Soviet style from Washington, D.C. decision. This is for the local people to decide. This is why you have a board of education locally. That's why you elect these people to represent you there. This is for them to decide. They know your area. They know your people. They know the needs of that school. They know the security risks in those schools. This is not an issue for Trump to be telling us, or the Congress to be legislating us to tell us how we're going to do this locally. They don't know the specifics of your area. They cannot know the specifics of your area. That is why we have local government. And they're the ones that should be doing this. It's none of their business in Washington. That's, again, why do we have a Department of Education in Washington, D.C.? There are no children under the Department of Education. There's no school districts under the Department of Education. So what are they there for? They're there to rule the states, to dictate how the states educate. Again, we got a lot of people out there are happy conservative Marxists. They're conserving their Marxism. The answer is get freaking Washington out of our schools. They have no authority there. There was go to Article 1, Section 8. Find public education in Article 1, Section 8. He also called for Congress to pass legislation to strengthen instant federal background checks, blah, blah, blah. Other proposals include having every state follow Florida's. So, okay, Florida did this. That's a Florida thing. And if Florida wants to suck, Florida can suck. New York sucks. Their gun laws suck. That's a state thing. And that's why a lot of people are leaving New York. New York sucks. Their taxes suck. Their gun laws suck. The whole state sucks. Pennsylvania's trying to catch up quickly. The other proposal includes having every state follow. See how? Let's just stop. Have every state follow. See how this works. See the danger. Read Suzanne's article, Suzanne and Carl Jones's article on national reciprocity, the Trojan horse. See how it works. So your state's good. You don't have these draconian laws that allow a court. Let me finish the sentence so you understand what I'm saying. To allow Florida's lead in allowing judges to issue extreme risk protection orders so cops can seize guns and ammunition from people. Blah blah blah. So in Florida now, somebody can make an anonymous tip, and the police are going to go and get some judge order and go confiscate people's guns and ammunition. There's no adjudication that this person's a threat. They've broken no laws. Yet somehow a judge is going to make a ruling that this person is a threat. Okay, you don't like government. You espouse the idea of states' rights. Now, who's to say that the next people that are a threat, are deemed a threat, are those that espouse state sovereignty? And now judges are going to order the confiscation of guns for those that believe in the states being the final arbiters of what's constitutional. It's not that far. It's not that far-fetched. Yet you see the danger in demanding a one-size-fits-all answer to every problem. So Florida sucks. They've set up a system where they can take anyone's gun just on the simple word of one person or a confidential informant, or the cops just coming in there making it all up, and now they're taking someone's guns. There really is no defense of liberty there. There's no defense of that person's due process under the law. It is just they're going to make a ruling that this person is somehow unfit, and now we're going to take their guns. But now we want we want every state to do this. It's going to come out of Washington, D.C. See how this all works? So you want national reciprocity? So what state are they going to model it after? The most lenient, the ones that don't even require a permit to carry concealed? Or are they going to go to California and New York and get a hybrid of the two most stringent ones that make it practically impossible to get a concealed carry permit. See the danger? They want every state, they're going to force every state to do a crappy job. In the case of this court thing, they're going to do the same thing when it comes to national reciprocity. They're going to force every state to do the most crappy, the most restrictive laws out there because they can't impose the most lenient. That it's a natural. They can't impose the ones that are most lenient that allow people to carry concealed because it's their natural right to self-preservation. And the tool to self-preservation is the firearm. They can't go that route because then it cuts them out of the way. But they will go the most restrictive route. And so you live in a state that does not require a permit to conceal carry. Guess what? Now you're going to have the most restrictive concealed carry permit possible out there. It'll be a May issue if they decide they want to give it to you, because I believe that's California, their May issue. And New York, good luck. If you're lucky, 9 months from now, you may get it. If the judge in that county decides that he likes concealed carry permits and he's going to issue them. Because the one right directly north of me, Chemung County, for a long, long time, that judge wouldn't issue any. He hated guns, and he wasn't going to allow anyone to have one. The one next door was good about it. Their judge is decent, but it's going to take you 9 months to go through the FBI background check, everything else that they have, every other hoop that you have to jump through in the state of New York just to purchase the pistol. You can't even purchase a pistol in New York State without your permit. So the people in Chemung County with this guy couldn't even get a permit to buy a pistol. So tell me who is going to be what concealed carry permit is the national government going to force on you? He wants to force this crappy law where any person can make any accusation and they're going to take your guns from you. So we were talking earlier about the right to life, and you have people that are going to be calling you on the phone saying, give us money so we can fight the right to life for against abortion, to get it regulated better. We're not going to get rid of it. We're not going to end the Holocaust. We're just going to make sure we can regulate it a little bit so we have we can keep ourselves relevant, and you can keep giving us money. So I had an article here somewhere. I'm not going to read it. Don't care. About the NRA and the big boom to their membership drive that this whole Florida shooting and the aftermath and all this desire for 21-year-old buying guns and blah, blah, blah. And I'm going to say something right now that is probably going to piss off a bunch of people, but it's the truth. The biggest threat to your natural right to self-preservation and the use of firearms to defend yourself is the NRA. Because what they are there for is not to defend liberty, but to get you to send them money. If they're for liberty, they would support the actual point of the Second Amendment, not their made-up incorporation doctrine. They would support the framers' intention in the preamble, that it was an absolute restriction on the general government that they could not regulate your natural rights. So what does that mean? That means that every federal firearms law ever written and ever to be written is unconstitutional. Yet that is not the fight they fight. They fight to keep the incorporation doctrine going, that it's you have a Second Amendment right. You got that right. And why do you have it? Because government gave it to you. Where does that lead? That's a civil right. That means they can regulate your rights. And if they want to, they can take them away, because they give them to you. They can take them away. So they're going to keep this fight going. You're going to keep sending them money, but they're the biggest threat to your natural right. Your gun rights are at stake because your blind allegiance to the National Rifle Association and sending them money, when in fact you have a natural right that this government has no authority over, and that all of it is unconstitutional. So even if they pass this, it's unconstitutional because the Bill of Rights were written to restrict the general government. They have no authority to say anything about your First Amendment rights as far as, again, it's not First Amendment right, your freedom of speech, your free expression, your right to worship as you see fit. Those are natural rights. They're in you because you're a human being. You are born with them. They were there before the Constitution. They'll be there after the Constitution. If this all falls apart, those rights will still be there. Your right to self-preservation, your right to being secure in your properties, those rights will be there after the Constitution. They were there before your Constitution. That's why the NRA is a threat to your liberty, a threat to your rights, because they're willing to fight the wrong fight so you keep sending them money. All right. I'm nearly out of time, and I'm sure I pissed off a lot of people. But you know what? I'm still technically a life member. I'm an NRA pistol instructor. I will send them not a penny more. But the fact of the matter is, governments are instituted to protect liberty. We read that from Patrick Henry. Didn't get to Patrick Henry today. But the fact of the matter is, if you truly want to defend your natural rights, call them natural rights. Stop demanding them give you Second Amendment rights. They're not a Second Amendment right. It's a natural right. They could, I said this before, they could repeal the Second Amendment if the Constitution was actually a limiting document. They could repeal the Second Amendment and it wouldn't make a bit of difference because gun regulation was not an enumerated power. They have no authority in the enumerated powers. Article 1, Section 8. Find it. The only arms, again, is related to the militia when they're called up for federal duty. If the federal government was called them up to fight and defend the border, say in Texas, say there was an invasion in Texas, they called up the militia, sent them there, they were to arm them. That's the only time they talk about arms. The rest of the time, it is a state issue. But we got to fight for those Second Amendment rights. Send me your dollars. Send me your dollars. We're going to fight for your Second Amendment right. No, I'm fighting for your natural right. That's more important. This is the Paradigm Shift here on the Cerberus Radio Network. Thank you for listening. I hope I really didn't piss you off that much. I hope that you start to think about this in a different way, because this isn't about civil rights. This isn't about them giving you something, because they give you nothing. You had it. You have it. You will have it. Don't give it up. Don't settle for the second best. Don't settle for getting what the leftovers, what they'll give you. All right, I'm past time. I'm going to play this music. I'm going to jump the music, this media file way out towards the end. And thank you for listening. Have a good day. This is the Paradigm Shift on the Cerberus Radio Network.